What is the difference between a regular thing and getting into a growth stage startup like this?
Joining a unicorn of a startup, right? And what are the challenges you are signing up for is what we're discussing, right? So in a nutshell, to be honest, right, Madhuri, it's going to be a roller coaster, right? And you have signed up for that. And if I have to point out one most important thing for decision making is to evaluate if you're ready to work with some amount of ambiguity when you are actually applying, or if you've been shortlisted for these jobs. It's early, product is evolving still.
Yeah.
You are going to be a very, very crucial part of decision making at this organization, because most of these are design first. The PMs are working with designers to get to the solutions, etc. Most of the cases, like companies who have been there for long and they have figured it out, they will. But more often than not, there are not going to be ready PRDs. There are not going to be any signed and approved solutions. And trust me, you have to be ready for the fact that these solutions will change dynamically on everyday basis. So key skill here is to deal with the ambiguity. I mean, be ready to deal with the ambiguity and to be ready to fail fast. The
Okay.
moment you get into a silo to work on that end-to-end workflow, beautifully charted out in a sketch-like tool or Adobe-like tool, it's already too late. You finish, you've almost reached the finishing line, and then somebody says, hey, we are changing
Yes.
direction or solution. There is a technical feasibility issue there. Let's go back to whiteboard. And these are real life problems. You don't need to get upset at that, and you need to work with that kind of an ambiguity is the key skill, right? And at an early stage in most of the startups, the PM roles will be played by one of the co-founders. And at an early age startups, like I did, I worked directly with the co-founders.
Yeah.
And your responsibility here will be to extract the essence out of every single conversation and try and look for the bigger picture rather than limiting yourself to some screens or one particular workflow or one particular problem statement at that point of time.
Yeah.
So just talk, whoever you're working with, try to get the essence out of these conversations, take a lot of notes and reflect on this. All the inputs you're getting is what I will suggest.
That's lovely. Actually, ambiguity part is something nobody talks about. So how did you go through that journey? Because we don't know it that we are in ambiguity until we cross it and come out. How do we, cross this path, or what are the markers of ambiguity? I know it's an off-topic question, but it's something that's important for all of us designers.
Absolutely. And this topic is also very close to my heart because I deal with it every day. CleverTap is a Series C funded now, but I've been with the product since day zero when there was no product. You can only imagine the kind of ambiguity I had to deal with because there's no product you are doctoring, or there is no product you are improvising on. You're making a product from scratch. That to a kind of a CDP platform, big data platform, with a lot of nuances to it, right? It's going to be very complex tool. And even if you're not, the ambiguity can be present in any form. Because at first, when a problem statement is taken for, let's say, your roadmap, we just say, okay, this is the problem we want to solve because the customer request has come in, because you're chasing some parity, or because you have some brilliant differentiator idea in your mind, right? And that I want to solve this is a very plain statement. Now, to add some details to it, you go through many cycles. It is not that a PM is going to sit and write user stories which are going to be ready for the consumption of a designer. I think you as a designer need to be equally a part of this early stage of solutioning alongside business, alongside engineers, alongside product managers, because they don't visualize like you do.
Yes.
The moment you hear what is the problem, if you just start visualizing, because you have power to visualize, right? So any of these stakeholders. So you need to use that power to visualize and course correct that solution in a due period of time. That collaboration over the period of time can get you to the right solution. It is not only the tech limitation. It is not only the business angle of it. And it is not only the product use cases, also about how do you productize this as a designer. Involvement of a designer at an early stage is very, very crucial. And attitude wise, I feel it's very important not to give up at this
Yeah.
phase. I've seen more often than not designers say, hey, solution is changing, it's too ambiguous, we are changing requirements every day, and we are going back to whiteboard. But that's what will happen because you're working on something big which has not been created previously.
Yeah.
So that's the crux of ambiguity. And how do you deal with that?
Yeah.
And it's an acquired skill, trust me. It's not, there are times where I get frustrated with changing requirements and additional use cases, and as I like to call it, this is my favorite thing, all variables and no constant. Being an engineer, that is back in my mind. So if you take an algebra equation and add all the variables in that without adding any constant value, how do you solve that equation, right? Many times you'll get into a situation where you will be given an equation with all the variables. You need to add your constants. You need to find out your constants and deal with that.
Yeah. And figure out what constants are there, first of all.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Now that leads naturally into a question like, how do you manage multiple roles at a time? Like, you could be a user researcher and then suddenly you have to be a UI designer if you are probably team of one or team of two. How does that happen?
And to be honest, this is a separate podcast in itself, because managing a team is not described probably in a few pointers here and there. I'm learning still, and I have learned a lot from my mentors and my managers in the past. Currently, I keep observing the people I don't even report into. In a nutshell, for designers, I feel design managers especially, I would like to say that people will join your design team if and only if they think they will learn from you, right? So you need to be that North Star for your team. If they don't respect, they will not join your team. And your team eventually becomes a reflection of who you are. Right. And as a design leader, I'd say you list down your priorities first. When you're building your team, that is, right. You list down your priorities. You list down the values and ethics you want to inculcate in your team. Skill sets you need them to develop, and work towards that, as opposed to micromanaging and making the designers lose their freedom of thought. Because as designers, you and I hate that, right? If somebody's micromanaging, because I have ideas, I have freedom of thoughts. So you want to make sure you're not managing their daily routine, but you're just nudging them in the right direction. And as a manager, you need to start detaching yourself with everyday work and focus on big picture. Many times people don't do that, and that's where they get into daily rut of solving independent things as opposed to focusing on the big picture. So you need to know what design for your product stands for and help your team mold their ideas and serve that big picture. And it's a difficult job at first, to be honest, but as the time goes, your team will become independent. It's a great thing, and they will think about any problem in a certain way, a way that matches your design philosophy and that you as a leader want to achieve. And how do I manage multiple roles at a time? It's, if I have to give you one answer, I calendar it. It's as simple as that. I have learned it from my mentors again. Multiple hats, very, very efficiently at the same time, and yet completely rock at what they do. As you organize yourself, you cannot do this. It's not possible. Time management, very important. You need to carve out meeting times, accept meeting invites or deny them. Make sure people know that you're busy at a certain time. Make people block your calendars if they need you in a meeting. Plan ahead and block calendars for others who need to review your work, etc. Go prepared for a conversation, make an agenda. Most importantly, block some personal time in your calendar to think and work. Because most of the time, design managers are wearing too many hats, like we just discussed, right? So I would suggest you carve out a time, a D&D time for yourself where you think and work. And you can, to be honest, totally go crazy and block your travel and lunch time in the calendar also. It really helps, because being a mother of two, I have my morning schedule set. More often than not, have calls than in during my travel time. Lately, I've started doing it, and it's working for me.
That's lovely. That's a pro tip. We should calendar everything.
Absolutely. Time management, you cannot negotiate for. You have to manage your time yourself. And actually, you're not perfect as a design manager, right? If you think what you are doing is 100% right, that's not the right thing. You need to observe other managers, observe other leaders, and see what they are doing right or what they are doing wrong, and how happy their teams are for what they do. Inputs from your team on what they expect out of you on a very regular basis. I think it is very important for a manager, any manager, that is to do one-on-ones with their teams on a regular basis, because that kind of gives you insights onto what are the blockers for them individually, not in terms of the work, but generally also as a growth path. You really don't need to do it at the end of the year in the appraisal cycle, because that's a formality, right? But if you've done that on a regular basis, they have evolved as a designer and you have evolved as a manager
Mhm.
simultaneously, so that you can do better to make them successful.
Do you suggest that you have a scheduled time one-to-ones with your team regularly so that we understand how they're growing and what kind of methods that they use to during these one-to-ones? How much should I prepare and how much should they prepare? I know this is still off tangent, but this all comes under the bucket of the team thing.
Absolutely. And I would suggest you schedule it beforehand. It needs to be a recurring on calendar. I do
Mm-hmm.
it personally for with my manager, and we never miss it. And I make sure I do it with my team, my direct reports on a regular basis. It doesn't need to be every week. It could be once in couple of weeks, once in a month. But
Yeah.
stick to your time and carve out that time to talk to your team, because that will give you great insights. And you can actually just, since you're asking me about the method, you can maintain a document of what we discussed, the key pointers out of it. What was something I was doing good? What was it that I needed to improve last time? And what I have achieved in between these two one-on-ones with my manager. And you yourself will reflect on that. You yourself will feel like, okay, I need to improve on this certain area and I will work towards it, as
Yeah.
opposed to shooting in the dark. At the end of the year, you're getting all the feedback, and although it's a 360 feedback, but it's already way too late.
With teams and working with other teams, how do you manage to work with a PM and what is the overlap and how do we manage the relationship between product management and design, the forever battle that we have with product
Yeah, although I know what you're talking about, that it's a battle sometimes. Think about it in this way. If you're working with someone who has design empathy, I'm
management.
not saying design input, you are in a brilliant company. If the product manager in question empathizes with the whole importance of design, it's you are going to rock at that project. So even if there is going to be overlap in your skills, it's perfectly all right, because like I just said few minutes back, you
Mhm.
work towards a solution, especially in a complex scenario like ours at CleverTap. Just by putting a designer hat, you will never come to a right solution, because you need to evaluate different disciplines, right? You need to evaluate the tech feasibility, you need to evaluate if it is the right business angle, because maybe the product is directed to go in a certain way, and your solution may not fit that direction. Somebody has the design empathy, especially product managers or co-founders in question at an early phase startup, I would say don't take it personally. uh, More often than not, we tend to take design and put on our ego as designers, right? And it's almost like I'm a designer and I know how to do this better than you do. And to avoid conflicting scenarios like this, I'd suggest you get into a habit of listening more. Most of the time, this feedback seems like some UI input, but what you need to decipher is the pain point behind it. So if somebody is giving you feedback about your design, it may not be because they just want to voice their opinion on something, right? There is some pain point behind it. Try and listen to it. Let them describe it. If you disagree, give better options. If you don't have a better option, try and explore the direction which was discussed with your PM or co founder. Come up with a logical merge between your idea and what they are suggesting for the improvement. So that way you can work together instead of working against each other. It never helps in my opinion, because it is disagree and commit. Sure, I disagreed with you, but I'm committing. But when I look back tomorrow, when I look back at yesterday, when I accepted your solution, I shouldn't be saying that, hey, it failed, but I already told you so. You know, you need to come up with an agreement, and you need to buy into that completely, because you're one team. And we need to remember that as designers, as opposed to just working as a designer.
Yeah. So the buy-in part also requires you to drop business certain ideas, because business says, hey, we are pivoting, and how do we as designers deal with it? I carried a frustration that's a lot of my work is not visible out there. Definitely I did, but now I'm peace with it. But how do we actually go about it in our daily lives?
I don't know whether it helps everyone here to know, but I'd like to tell you guys that I have had to shelve a lot of cool projects midway, because not just the business pivot, but also logistical issues like unavailability of resources, or technical challenge, or change in the roadmap due to customer commitments. The reasons could be many.
Many.
This is life, and you need to be able to deal with it. You can't be stubborn about, okay, I have started on some idea, let me finish it. Maybe it is not important for the business. Maybe we are wiser than what we were yesterday. That little more wiser input into today's day, I think, if it is changing and if it is logical, accept it. And I would actually, on this point, Baduri, I would like to remember a professor of mine in NID. He was a graphic design faculty, SM Shah. We had these courses in NID. We would be given an assignment during that course, and this particular professor asked us to make 100 options for every problem statement he gave us.
Oh my God.
Morning, we had to come up with 100 solutions or 100 iterations for that, only to discard those 100 options and make another 100. So this is a habit we got into. This is a very important lesson. It's a life lesson as opposed to a design lesson, where they taught us not to fall in love with our designs, only to strive to make it better with every possible input, with every time, every second, every possible feedback you get. Coming back to what you asked me about, if the business is pivoting and I have a frustration about it, just remember that you can always do better tomorrow. Again, there will be frustration. You have to deal with that. Right? But don't fall in love with your designs ever.
Yes, that should work for all of us. Now, that reminds me, we did make a progress on an idea that was shared probably 2 days ago. And we are going through saying that today in the stand-up, I'm going to present the progress. But sometimes I feel that, why should I present this? I feel like I've not done anything, How should I do that? Like, how do I actually make sure that I quantify the work that I have done? It's not justify, it's more quantify and share it in a structured manner. How do I do it? It's midway, right? Yeah.
Right. Absolutely. And this is a very, very valid question. And I'm sure a lot of people face this. And in fact, I have personally gone through this. This is through experience, and this is through we striving to make our design process at CleverTap better every passing day. We are not stuck to it. Like, we are not stuck to our designs. We are not stuck to our processes also. We strive to make them better. And one thing we realized, that daily stand-ups are useful only and only if you have your personal sprint or your personal time planned out well. Again, going back to my calendar, right? These need to be used, I mean, the stand-ups, to tell your team about you're on track or no. It doesn't need to be a description of, okay, what you have done last week, this week I'm planning this. No, it has to be 2 weeks of sprint is planned properly. I know what I'm going to do every day. Today, what I have to do, is it on track or no? So this is the essence of stand up, right? So giving percentage completion of a task to the team is practically useless in my opinion. So I'd advise you to break your tasks into logical subtasks while you're planning the sprint, during the sprint planning meeting, or while you're grooming the sprint, etc. And these need to be very small logical subtasks that are plotted in a way that you complete every subtask every day, let's say, or every half a day. So example, if you're doing competitor research, so you say in your sprint task that today I will do the research of product A and product B, these two sections, right? And be done with that. It's a logical endpoint to your research phase, as opposed to saying I'll look at 100, I'll leave the tabs open, I'll not finish it. You
Mhm.
need to conclude out of that task, and you need to mention in your subtask in whatever tool you're using, Jira or something. This, if I have mentioned competitor research in my sprint task today, I need to know what is the output of that, and that is the output which you need to tell or showcase your team. Okay, I had said I'll present 10 pointers about the competitor research, and I'm done with those 10 pointers. Trust me, it works amazingly. The feeling of completion in this manner is a lot more satisfying than saying that okay, I'm 40% away from completion. It doesn't tell you where you are. Tell your sprint team also where you are in terms of completion. So today you are giving 40%, tomorrow you'll give some 40, whatever, 30.
Percent up.
It's same for them.
You're basically saying I have to objectively break down my big chunk into a smaller chunk and then approach it half day by half day so that I can make sure that, whatever is planned for that day is at least completed and dusted. So I have an answer to actually share to my team and they are informed because of my actions. Right?
Absolutely. And you also have the sense of completion. Logically you're progressing towards something as opposed to, shooting in the dark.
Yes, makes sense. Now, this actually leads me to a question, which is, does Slack help in collaboration? Slack will ban me, but I will try.
Yeah, absolutely. And to be honest, I have been battling with this point myself. So
Okay.
it's a great tool. I love Slack.
Mhm.
For what it can do, it's usable. But my answer is somewhere between. It's yes and no. I feel you need to be disciplined while using Slack, right? I opt out of all the channels that are irrelevant. And trust me, at CleverTap, the rate at which we are growing, the number of channels that are created, you wouldn't believe, but we have a birthday channel so that we don't pollute other channels with the birthday messages. We have a food channel. I mean, these are random channels, right? We also have a random channel, by the way. But
Yes.
we have sprint specific channels, we have team specific channels, we have project specific channels. So there is so much noise and there is so much conversation which is going every day that to me it is very difficult to keep on top of every possible conversation, right?
Possible thing.
I opt out of channels that are irrelevant for me. I personally mark myself, okay, leave the channel. And I have a dedicated time actually to go through group conversations. I don't actually keep clicking onto group conversations as in when they show up in my feed, but I'm on top of my personal messages on Slack. Having said that, I don't rely on Slack for prompt responses because you need to give a person benefit of doubt that they're not constantly staring at a screen, either your phone or your monitor. So there will be delay in response. So if you're using Slack for prompt responses or feedbacks, it is not the channel to use. You might as well just do a quick call, or if it is if entire team is sitting in one place, I prefer to go to the person and talk personally. And one more challenge I find with Slack is that once clicked, you have already read it, you can't unread it. Able to remind yourself that okay, this was a good point, I don't have time right now, but I need to consume it again when I have time. It is way too difficult. So it's a great conversational platform, but it is a limiting platform when it comes to threads of conversations. It is limiting as when it comes to responses and feedback. So I would stick to what it is supposed to do rather than using it for everything.
That actually, just closes the point of, how we deal with teams and all of that.